Hello and welcome to this episode of Mind Your Business. Today we have been joined by our guest Matt. Matt, if you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Cool, thanks Mark. Yep. Hi, I'm Matt Gratze. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for a company called Neve Jewels. Neve Jewels has three brands, Austin and Blake, Diamonds Factory and Sasset, and they offer bespoke and customised jewellery across the globe. I've got 22 years in digital retail, spanning from the brands of the likes of Apple, Currys, Dixons, Best Buy, Homebase, Mothercare, Ann Summers, Halfords, Ernest Jones, H. Samuel, to name a few. So quite a few big brand retailers in there. I'd like to think I know most things about digital retailing, but I'm always learning. So.
Absolutely, wow. Well, that's great. I mean, and some really big hit names there that you've got. So, Matt, I mean, just give us a bit of a backstory as to how you got into this business and why it started.
Sure. So, completely by accident.
Okay.
So I was at university, having spent 5 years working at Waitrose behind a meat and fish counter. I was doing a business and management course, and I just wanted to get in and get out, get the degree, and go on and get into the big wide world without knowing what I wanted to do. Then there was one day, I was at a barbecue party one summer, and there was this chap next to me, didn't know him, got talking to him, and he was currently finishing his work placement with a small company called Apple. And he said that they've been interviewing people, and they're all the wrong kind of people for the next gap placement students to come through. So he said, why don't you come in and have a chat? So I went in and had a chat, not knowing anything about the company. I didn't really know much about Apple at the time.
Yep.
It was a long time ago. And all of a sudden they said, look, why don't you do this placement? We'll give you this much money. This is the sort of things we'd want you to do. And I was like, oh yeah, go on then. And that then set up a career of digital retailing, started off in consumer electronics, and that kind of kick-started it. So I always like to think things happen for a reason, but that wasn't what I was expecting, and I'll go on to what I think that means and the lessons learned from that in the future.
Yeah, wow. Do you know what? It's always interesting whenever I speak to business owners and entrepreneurs about the different business opportunities that they have. And a lot of the time it is always tripping over like something rather than sort of like sitting there and planning it out. They'll come up with this sort of, like you said, at a barbecue, bumped into someone, never met them before, and before you know it, here you are.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. So one of the things I always like to ask people, now that you've got the business where it is, developing sort of like some of the challenges and the wins that you've had, what would you say have been some of the biggest wins you've had since you've launched the business?
Since we launched I wasn't a founder of the business I'm in at the moment.
Yep.
But some of the wins we've had is going global. What we find is the previous business I worked at was so stuck in the UK, and what I find is when you can go global and do cross border, you find new markets, new customers to speak to.
Yeah.
And when you have issues like we're our economy in the UK is struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
We see the cost of living crisis kicks in.
Yeah.
We see inflation and all these types of things with the current climate. What it means is actually when we've got cross border territories, we can pivot. So rather than spend our marketing money and our acquisition money in an area where there's not so much buoyancy, we can actually get more money in a different area. So whether it's the likes of Germany, which is a bit more buoyant, or whether we go to Australia, or whether we look at Canada, where you are seeing economic growth. So I guess the biggest thing that we're learning at the moment is to always be agile enough to pivot, and don't be afraid to broaden your horizons. Don't get stuck in your lane. And that's what we're finding at the moment.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So Matt, just give us a bit more of a background to the umbrella company and more importantly, the three different companies that you've got running within that.
Yeah, 100%. So we've got this, the company primarily is Neve Jewels. And what Neve Jewels allows us to do is create bespoke customised jewellery, manufactured outside of the UK, but manufactured for you. So we take an order and then we go and build it. What that means is we don't hold inventory, so we can use our cash for other things like spending more on stores or in marketing or on technology. We've got three brands, one called Austin and Blake, which is a bit more of our high street showroom, experiential, come on in, have a glass of champagne, we'll coach you through the buying journey. It's a real nice experience, particularly if you're there with your partner.
Yep.
Because usually there's two of you buying jewellery, sometimes it's particularly with engagement and weddings and stuff. Yeah. We have another brand called the Diamond Factory, which is more of it's a bit more digital led. But we have many showrooms across the globe. We're in 22 countries across Europe, Australia. We've launched in Singapore. We've launched in Canada. Wow. These types of places where we can offer the customer a quicker journey, go online. It's very much digitally led, but you can still come in and have an appointment and go through the stock with us. And then we've got Sasset, which is a brand new brand launched this year. That's primarily for our French audience, so it's very similar to Austin & Blake, but it's a bit more of a French design feel to the jewellery that we have there. And that really suits our French market, and we're starting to expand that out across France at the moment, and other areas where you might have more French influence, such as, I don't know, Belgium, Vietnam, and places like that. So those three brands, we are finding that we're kind of disrupting the market, because we are offering stuff that traditional jewellers can't, particularly with the customization piece. And we are exceptionally good value because we've taken out the middleman of buying stock and holding stock. We don't have those overheads. So therefore we can pass that on to the consumer, and they can get a little bit more value out of the product that they're trying to buy.
Wow. Wow, so it's quite diverse to say the least, Matt. I mean, it's a really interesting sort of concept as well, where you've got those three different businesses within that. So one of the questions I always like to ask is to find out a bit more about the man or the person behind the business and a bit more about you. So what's your backstory?
Sure, well, my backstory is very varied. As you know, so working at Apple opened up a number of doors for me. And this is what one of the tips later on is around, networking and taking chances and risks. But I left university not knowing what I wanted to do. Got offered an interview at Dixon's Currys and PC World, and found out later on that generally I got the job because I had Apple on my CV, right? Because they were becoming the brand, the name. Little did they know how many mistakes I made at Apple, and some of the stories we had there. But I then went into the world where the internet was unknown. This was 23 years ago. Yep. The Dixons decided that they wanted to take Dixons off of the high street, turn them into Currys Digital. And with Dixons, they were going to create this pure play online retailer because it was the buzzword everyone was going in for. So I said, well, I'll go and help that. After a year of working in TVs and DVDs and VHS, right? I said, go on, I'll go and have a go. So, but going in there, we was like 7 of us, building a website. We were doing our own PPC, we were designing our own emails, we were taking stock and doing inventory management, we were creating banners for the homepage and trying to design whatever that, we didn't really know how to design. But within a year, it was the most profitable part of the Dixons stores group. It was huge, and it just went crazy. But because I got that foundational knowledge, I was talking to a guy in a lift, and he said, "How do you feel about coming to look at this pure play website?" And I said, yeah, go on then. And that just snowballed. And we learned, Facebook had just become a thing. Or it wasn't really a thing. About a year into it became a thing. So we're there doing posts and, whereas now you've got teams specialised in all these subjects. We were just doing it from scratch. Yeah. And then from there I got asked, a lot of us moved over. A company called Best Buy from the States came over to merge with Carphone Warehouse and wanted to challenge consumer electronics in Europe. So a lot of our team moved over to Best Buy, and I was asked to go over there as well. Yeah. And then from there, it was even more of a steep learning curve because we were actually designing and building the website from scratch. Yeah. So before you know it, within 3 or 4 years of growing up, being young, straight out of university, I'd learned everything from creating a website, marketing a website, emails, inventory management, and the whole full story, right? Yeah. But then Best Buy Carphone didn't really work out. Credit Crunch hit. Best Buy's model was primarily driven around customers coming in, trying the products, and then going home and buying the products. But what we were finding was they were coming in and trying the products, and then this even smaller company called Amazon were just around the corner. They were offering it for a bit cheaper. Yep. People were coming in and getting what they wanted, getting the shopping list and buying it elsewhere. Yeah. So it didn't really work for us. I then went to Homebase, which was great, big corporate home retail group owned. So there was Argos and Homebase in the same building. And met a chap called Andy McWilliams. He's a great mentor of mine. So worked with him for a year. Then he went over to a company called Ann Summers, and I then followed him over. And then from there, the knowledge just kept building and building and building, and I've just met person after person that's been able to bring me into these businesses where I've kind of gone up the ladder to where I am today.
Wow. That's a pretty intense backstory that you've got there, and lots of diversity as well. So loving that. That's great, Matt. So you've mentioned a few big companies there. I mean, have you got any sort of anecdotal stories or little funnies that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing to note is things don't always go as planned, right? I remember so when I was doing Apple, I was there for a year as this graduate that was more interested in socialising and having fun than I was at actually nailing down and focusing on my future career. But what happened was after about 3 or 4, maybe 5 months, the person I was reporting into went off onto long-term sick, and I was in this PR department, pushing the likes of Jonathan Ives, who just designed the iPod when it was like Generation 2, and it was just becoming quite popular in the UK. It was almost a cult product. You remember the white headphones that used to come out? No one had seen white headphones before, right?
Yep.
So there was this article going around, or there was these things in the newspapers saying that the white headphones were becoming things that robbers could identify. So there was a lot of muggings going on because they knew you had something expensive in your pocket when you've got these white headphones hanging out. And I was at an industry talking to one of the editors of Stuff magazine, and he was like, "Well, look, completely off the record, we're having a drink together." He said, "Look, a lot of people I talk to, they'd rather look cool and run the risk of being robbed than actually worry about being robbed." And I was like, okay, cool. And then this guy phoned me up the next day in the office. I didn't really know who it was, and I was chatting to them on the phone. And I repeated that same quote. The next thing you know, on the front of the Independent and the Standard and the Metro newspapers was a quote from Apple saying, "Yeah, but people would rather look cool than be robbed." And I was like, oh my God, head in hands, thinking I was going to get fired. But what it actually did was they did the investigation, worked out it came from my phone, and I was like, oh God. So I walked into the head of Europe's office like a naughty schoolboy. And to be fair, that they knew that there wasn't enough wraparound support. But what you learn there is after that, after I'd met the head of Europe, the exposure I got and the mentoring I got was brilliant because I'd made a mistake in the first place.
Yeah.
But it gave me so much exposure to the way they work, the way they think.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, I'm working with Steve Jobs, introducing him to Rory McClelland of the BBC. And at the time, I didn't really realise how big he was. And it's not until you 20 years later you look back and you think, wow, what an opportunity.
Absolutely.
But no, I mean, working out, I'd say top tip there is, learn from the mistakes. Don't be afraid of them. Own them and be accountable, and then just see what happens afterwards. Not everything's as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners are going to really sort of take something from that. So thanks for that one, Matt. Got any more up your sleeve, or?
Well, the only other one I'd say is never be fazed by the unexpected. What I mean by that is I remember having an interview I was coming out of home base, and I was asked to go for a role at Ann Summers. So in a way, one DIY retailer to another DIY retailer. But sat there, I remember the MD at the time, Vanessa Gold, wanted to meet me in person before offering the role, even though it was reporting to someone else. And I remember sitting in her office as this, I don't know, I wasn't married, I was sat there quite innocent, and the first thing I did was sit down and look up, and on her shelf was the entire range of rampant rabbits, from the small one to this huge monstrosity at the end, all in size order. And I think, she's asking me very serious questions about what am I going to do, what are my aspirations, how am I going to help the company go forward. And every time I looked up at her, all I could see was these rampant rabbits just staring you back in the face. And it was, how to deal with a high-pressured situation all in one go. I mean, that business was bonkers, and you desensitise very, very quickly. But yeah, it was a great introduction to the world of adult toys, should we say? Yeah.
Wow, that's you've definitely got some lessons learned in that one.
Absolutely, in more ways than one.
Brilliant. Okay, so one of the things that I want to move on to now is, you've mentioned it a couple of times, but some of the biggest learnings in most people's business lives and personal lives for that matter are from some of the challenges that we face in business and life. Mm-hmm. So what would you say has been some of your biggest challenges in business, and what was the lessons that you've learned from them?
Okay, yeah. So for me, the biggest challenge is working for diverse people. right? So in some of the big corporations, you have, the higher up the positions are, the more stress and the more pressure there is. Yeah. They're reporting into shareholders, you're reporting into markets, you're reporting into non-exec boards. And at the same time, a lot of the CEOs I've worked with have actually tried to be progressing their careers as well. Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge for me is working under different styles of leadership. Yeah. There's been some styles that haven't worked well for me. There's different styles of leaderships where you've got kind of some empower, inspire, motivate, and allow you to thrive, whereas others, it's what you'd look back and you'd call a burn and churn culture, where they just want to burn and rinse and get as much out of you before the next person comes along, because you can't do it anymore, and then they're there. And I think trying to navigate and understand how to operate in certain different environments can be challenging. It leads to toxicity in the workplace. There's a lot of politics to try and navigate, versus the empowerment and the enterprise where everyone wants to thrive and go together. So the biggest challenge has been trying to understand and navigate those different styles of leadership. Yeah. But what it has done is enable me to cherry pick the good bits and make sure I'm not doing the bad bits, because there's a lot of bad leaders out there. Yes. But there's a lot of very good ones as well. So I think that's the biggest challenge for me, is making sure that my leadership style is one that I would want to be working for. Yeah. Which sounds quite simple, but is often lost in a high-pressured environment.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, and I think you're right. One of the lessons that I've sort of extracted from what you're saying there, Matt, is it's not always about knowing what to do, but also knowing what not to do. And I always say, there's this golden rule of treat others as they'd like to be treated. But then the platinum rule is treat others as they would like to be treated, not how you would like to be treated. Because quite a common misconception is that we're all the same. Yeah. So therefore, it's understanding each individual person that works with you, whether that's someone that's a colleague or an employee, and understanding them to the level where you can actually give them what they want and understand what they want and what drives them.
Exactly, and you look underneath all of that, and I love the spirit and the ethos of the New Zealand rugby team. Yep. Over the last 10 years, they've incorporated one motto: don't be a dickhead. Yep. Right? Legacy,
the book, is absolutely fantastic.
Right.
You read that?
I haven't read the book, but I just maybe seen the 5-minute snippet. Right. Yeah. I'm too lazy, but it's but for me, it just it's quite blunt. Yeah. But it puts everything in perspective, and just follow that philosophy, and things will go well for you.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I love that philosophy. So, Matt, moving on to a quick fire round now. So I'm just going to ask you a handful of questions, and just whatever comes to mind, just fire it off. So first question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Work-related.
Work-related or personal, whatever you want.
There's a lot of advice given at Anne Summers. The best advice I've been given is, again, a really great coach, mentor of mine, a chap called Keith Jones. And he bangs it into me every time I meet to him, the power of networking. And what I mean by that is having a list, always networking, always open to networking new people, finding new contacts. It opens new doors, whether you're looking for them or not. And even if you don't think it's a great network or a great contact to have, still add it in the list, still reach out, have coffees, have regular updates. It means that it will amplify your career, amplify the amount of opportunities in front of you relentlessly. So for me, the best advice was always maintain that networking.
Yeah, that's a fantastic piece of advice. I think, broadening your network and your community and finding and meeting new people is definitely the way forward.
100%. I mean, I coach girls football, and the amount of parents I talk to and bump into, and you start digging a little bit deeper and understanding what they do, who they work for, and all of a sudden you've created, there's 100 parents there that have got, 50% have got something relevant to what you might be doing. Yeah. And that's in social life, not just in your work life. So I think always be on the lookout for making new contacts, building rapport, and meeting new people.
Brilliant, love it. So, what's a book or a podcast that you'd recommend? And you can give us a couple of books if you like, or a couple of podcasts.
Well, I think for me, you have to balance, right? So I'll give you one book that I've read that I would recommend. You've probably heard of it, Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. Yep. Great book. It allows you to look at what the commonalities are between very, very highly successful people and pick up some new tips and tricks along the way. But I balance everything, and one thing I read, I think it may have even come from that book actually, is to always have something that's pleasurable as well as educational. And so I'm a big advocate for reading as for pleasure, not just for career growth.
Yep.
So I balance that with things like *Sapiens*, or I've just read *The Trading Game* by Gary Stevenson. Very fascinating book, an insight into the people that are looking after your pensions and your stocks and your shares and your ISAs and everything else. So I would say Tools of Titans for the educational career development reading, but balance it with something like *Sapiens*, something like *The Trading Game*, or something that you want to read for pleasure, whether it's the next Jack Reacher book or whatever.
Yeah, no, I love that. And funny enough, this morning we were talking about Tim Ferriss, and he's done the 4-hour work week, the 4-hour body, and the 4-hour chef. And I think it's from the 4-hour body where he talks about the 30-30-30. You familiar with that?
I'm not, no.
And when I was at the gym this morning, one of the PTs said, "You've only just got here." I said, "I've been here for an hour." And then I thought about it as I was walking out, and I thought, well, Tim Ferriss says that if you have 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up and then do 30 minutes of steady exercise, you'll see the weight just drop off. I'm still waiting for that to happen. But, pretty good advice from someone like Tim Ferriss, right? So, yeah, Tim Ferriss. Great,
I'll try that.
Great books.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what's a tool that you're currently using in the business that you couldn't live without?
We use many tools, but for me, I'm loving Gemini Pro. I know you've got ChatGPT and all the other tools, but for me, Gemini Pro, from two aspects. One is obviously I'm coaching girls football. I can knock up a session plan within seconds, right? So it makes my life a hell of a lot easier. And there's a lot of stress going into session plans. You think working in a corporate environment, boardrooms are stressful. You try running around with 100 kids that don't know how to kick a ball. That's very stressful. Yeah. So Gemini Pro, but because of the way you can bring pictures in, imagery with Nano Banana, the way you can use it with video content, with VO3, and starting to use those tools, and even just reading through documents and building scripts, organising your life. So for me, Gemini Pro, we're going to evolve. This time next year, you're going to look back at this and say, Gemini Pro, my God, that's so last season, and there'll be something else out there. Yeah. But for me right now, I'm getting a lot of leverage from it.
Brilliant, great one. And then I'm going to throw a curveball in there. So I often ask this question, and it's one that I love to ask. If you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh God, take the risks. I think there's a lot. Balance your life, right? I've been through the highs and lows of a corporate career, and the lows can be quite rubbish. So I think always making sure you balance something. And when I look back and went through some of those lows, what I realised was I wasn't doing anything for me. I was always working hard and grafting hard and burning myself out for other people. And hence why I've taken up other activities. So always have something in your personal life that you enjoy doing. Because the minute you're not enjoying it, it becomes a slippery spiral and you just burn yourself out. Yeah. So if I was to look back, I went through a gap in my career, probably about 3 or 4 years, straight after having kids, where I'd stopped all the stuff I was doing. I'd become a dad, so it meant that my hours and time was restrained. But then trying to carve out time personally for me, I would say that would be the thing I'd look back as an 18-year-old. Make sure you always do that going forward in life.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice. Really sound advice. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping things up now then. So, Matt, there's going to be a lot of people that are watching and listening this audio and obviously video that we're creating today on this podcast. And for them to find out more about you and more about the business, what would be the best way for them to get in touch?
Sure. I mean, we've got lots of websites, austinandblake.co.uk, diamondsfactory.co.uk. Go and buy a nice jewellery, a nice piece of jewellery for your significant other. You can reach out to me on email, matt.gratze@nevejewels.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I do have an Instagram presence somewhere. But no, I mean, LinkedIn is probably a very easy way to get hold of me. Or if anyone wants to chat or meet for a coffee to find out more, drop me an email, like I say, matt.gratze@nevejewels.com.
Fantastic. Well, that is a wrap for this episode of Mind Your Business. We'll see you all again very soon. Bye for now.